A man once escaped a burning house. The flames were real. The heat was unbearable. Every second inside felt like it could be his last. So he ran. Out the door. Into the open air. Away from the fire. And when he stepped outside, he collapsed. Breathing heavily. Relieved. Alive. People gathered around him. They said, "You're safe now." And for a moment, he believed it. But then something strange happened. His heart kept racing. His body stayed tense. His mind kept seeing the fire, over and over again. Even though the house was behind him, the fire wasn't gone. It had followed him, not outside, inside. Every sound made him alert. Every silence made him uneasy. Every thought pulled him back into that burning moment. Days passed. Then, weeks. The house was gone. The danger was gone. But he still couldn't rest. And one day, he realized something that didn't make sense at first. He didn't escape the fire. He escaped the building. The fire was still alive in his mind. And now, there were no flames to run from, no door to exit, no place to escape to, just a constant burning that no one else could see. That's what your life feels like right now. You escaped the house, the people, the situation, the environment, but the fire, the patterns, the thoughts, the reactions your mind learned are still running, still repeating, still pulling you back into something that no longer exists outside, but feels real inside. And this is why nothing fully fixes it. Because you keep trying to escape the building, when the fire is now in your mind, and until you understand that, you will keep running, without ever feeling free. You escaped the world, but you brought the real prison with you. You thought distance would fix it. Not in a dramatic way, just a quiet belief you didn't question. If I leave this place, I'll feel better. If I get away from these people, something will finally change. If I start over, I'll become someone else. So you moved, maybe physically, maybe emotionally. You cut people off. You changed your routine. You walked away from things that once felt heavy. And, for a while, it worked. You felt lighter. There was space. There was relief. The noise around you got quieter. And for the first time in a long time, you could breathe. It felt like progress. It felt like healing. It felt like you had finally escaped. But then something subtle started happening. Not outside, inside. It didn't come all at once. It came slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed. The same thoughts began to return. Not exactly the same words, but the same feeling, the same doubt, the same overthinking. You started analyzing things again. Small things, conversations, decisions, memories. Your mind began replaying moments, creating scenarios, imagining outcomes that never happened. And suddenly, that peace you thought you found started slipping. You tried to ignore it. You told yourself, it's just temporary, but it kept coming back. Late at night, in silence, in moments where nothing was wrong, your mind became loud again. And this is where confusion begins. Because now you don't understand. You left the place. You removed the problem. So why does it still feel the same? Why does the weight still exist? Even when everything around you has changed? This is the part most people never stop to see clearly. You didn't escape. You relocated the prison. The environment changed, but the structure of your mind did not. The patterns you built over time came with you. Because they were never tied to a place, they were tied to how you see, how you react, how you think. And the mind doesn't reset just because your location changes. It continues from where it left off, like a story that never ended. You can close the chapter, but the narrative inside you keeps moving, and that's why the same feelings return. In different situations, you might meet new people, but the same insecurities show up. You might face new opportunities, but the same fear holds you back. You might sit in a completely different environment, but your mind recreates the same tension. Not because the world is the same, but because your lens is the same. This is difficult to accept because it removes the illusion of control. It forces you to see something deeper, that the discomfort you feel is not entirely coming from outside. It is being generated inside, then projected onto everything around you. You start thinking, maybe this place isn't right either. Maybe these people are also wrong. Maybe I need another change. So the cycle repeats. You move again. You adjust again. You try again, hoping this time it will finally be different. But each time, the same pattern follows. Because you are trying to escape something that is not located in the world. It is located in your mind. And this doesn't mean your experiences weren't real. It doesn't mean people didn't hurt you. It doesn't mean your environment didn't affect you. It did. But what stayed, what continues, is how your mind processes everything now. The reactions, the interpretations, the automatic thoughts that appear without your permission. That is the real prison. Not the situation, but the constant inner movement that never lets you rest. You can sit in a peaceful place and still feel disturbed. You can be alone and still feel crowded inside your own head. You can remove every external problem and still feel something is not right, because the prison is not physical. It is psychological. It is the habit of thinking, the habit of reacting, the habit of believing every thought that appears. And the more you try to run from it, the more you realize there is nowhere to go, because wherever you go, you arrive there with the same mind, the same patterns, the same internal noise. This is not meant to make you feel stuck. It is meant to make you aware, because the moment you truly see this, something shifts. You stop blaming every external thing. You stop chasing endless changes outside, and for the first time, you turn your attention inward, not to fix everything immediately, but to observe, to understand, to see clearly what is actually happening inside you. Because if the prison was outside, escape would be enough. But if the prison is inside, then escape will never work. Only understanding will. And that realization is where real freedom begins. Your mind never stops. It just changes the way it tortures you. You call it thinking. It feels normal, constant, automatic, always there. You wake up and it's already running. Before you even get out of bed, it has started planning, remembering, worrying, comparing. You don't turn it on. It is already on, and you've lived with it for so long. You stopped noticing how relentless it actually is. But slow down for a moment. Really look at what your mind is doing. Not the content, but the pattern. It doesn't stop. It doesn't pause. It doesn't say, that's enough for today. It keeps going, from one thought to another, without rest. And here is what makes it dangerous. It disguises itself as something useful. It tells you, I'm helping you. I'm solving problems. I'm preparing you. But most of the time, It is not solving anything. It is repeating the same fear, dressed differently, the same worry, in a new form, the same insecurity, with a different story. It shifts the topic, but the feeling stays the same. You think you are moving forward, but you are going in circles. And because the thoughts are always changing, you don't notice the repetition. It feels fresh. It feels important. So you engage. You follow it. You try to figure it out, but there is nothing to figure out. Because the mind is not trying to reach a conclusion. It is trying to stay active, to keep you occupied, to keep you inside it. This is why even when nothing is wrong, you still feel uneasy. You sit in silence. And suddenly your mind finds something, a memory, a mistake, a possibility, something to pull you back into thinking. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you keep following it. And once you follow it, it grows. One thought becomes 10, 10 becomes a chain. And before you realize it, you are lost in it, emotionally involved, reacting to something that is not even happening in reality. This is how your energy gets drained, not from physical work, but from mental activity that never stops. You might spend hours doing nothing externally, but internally, you are exhausted because your mind has been running the entire time, without pause, without silence, without space. And the more you get used to this, the more it becomes your normal state. You start to believe this constant noise is just how life is. You say things like, "I can't stop thinking. My mind is always busy. This is just who I am." But look deeper. Is it really who you are? Or is it a habit that has never been questioned? A pattern that has repeated so many times. It feels like your identity. The mind has learned to stay active, because every time it produces a thought, you give it attention, you follow it, you react to it. So it continues, over and over again, not because it is necessary, but because it has been reinforced. And the most subtle part is this: even when you try to relax, your mind finds a way to continue. You sit down to rest, and suddenly you're thinking about the past, or imagining the future, or analyzing something small. You are physically still, but mentally active, and because of that, you never experience real rest. Real rest is not just the absence of activity outside. It is the absence of unnecessary activity inside. But your mind doesn't allow that easily, because it has been trained to fill every empty space with thoughts, with noise, with constant movement. So silence begins to feel uncomfortable. Stillness begins to feel strange, and you quickly go back to thinking, just to feel familiar again, even if that familiarity is exhausting, even if it is painful, because at least it is known. This is why your mind feels like it never lets you go, because it doesn't. It keeps pulling you back, into thinking, into analyzing, into reacting, not in one obvious way, but in many subtle ways. It changes its strategy. Sometimes it uses fear. What if something goes wrong? Sometimes it uses regret. Why did that happen? Sometimes it uses comparison. They are ahead. You are behind. Sometimes it uses imagination. Maybe this could happen. Different forms, same effect. You stay inside your mind. You stay engaged. You stay trapped in movement. And because it is constant, you don't even realize how much it controls your experience. You think life feels heavy, but it is not life itself. It is the constant interpretation of life happening inside your mind, without pause, without awareness. And until you see this clearly, you will keep trying to fix the outside. You will keep searching for peace in situations, in people, in changes. But the noise will follow because it is being produced within you, moment by moment, thought by thought. Your mind never stops. It only changes the way it keeps you inside it. And the moment you begin to see that pattern, not intellectually, but directly, you start to separate from it, not by force, not by control, but by awareness. And that is the first crack in what once felt unbreakable. You don't think. You obey every thought that appears. A thought enters your mind, and before you even notice it, you are already inside it, not observing it, not questioning it, following it. It happens so fast, you don't see the moment of choice. Because for you, there is no choice. There is just reaction. The thought says something, and you believe it instantly. If something feels off, something must be wrong. If I feel anxious, danger must be near. If I remember that moment, it still matters right now. You don't stop to ask, is this true? You don't pause to see, where did this come from? You just move with it. And that is the hidden pattern you've been living inside your entire life. You think you are thinking, but you are not. You are obeying whatever appears, as if it has authority over you, as if every thought is a command, and you must follow it. Look closely at your own experience. A random thought appears, and suddenly your mood changes. Nothing happened outside, no real event, just a thought. And yet, it shifts your entire state. You feel anxious, or heavy, or uncertain. Why? Because you didn't see it as a thought. You saw it as reality. And the moment you treat a thought as reality, your body reacts. Your emotions respond. Your entire system follows. And now you are no longer just thinking. You are experiencing something that doesn't actually exist. This is how powerful unconscious thinking is. Not because thoughts are strong, but because your belief in them is immediate, automatic, unquestioned. And the mind knows this, so it keeps producing thoughts, not to guide you, but to keep you engaged, to keep you reacting, to keep you inside a loop you don't even see. One thought leads to another. You follow the first one, then the second, then the third, until you are completely lost. And if someone asked you, what happened? You wouldn't even know, because nothing actually happened. You just got pulled into a chain of thinking that felt real, but was never grounded in anything outside your mind. This is why you can feel overwhelmed while sitting alone in a quiet room. This is why your mood can shift without any external reason, because your internal world is being shaped by thoughts you never question. You assume, if I'm thinking it, it must matter. If it's in my mind, it must be important. But the truth is far more unsettling. Most of what appears in your mind is not important. It is not accurate. It is not even relevant. It is just activity. Conditioned patterns repeating themselves. Memories resurfacing. Fears projecting themselves forward. Random associations forming new stories. But you treat all of it the same, as truth, as something to engage with, as something that deserves your attention. And that is where the trap deepens. Because every time you obey a thought, you strengthen the habit. You reinforce the pattern. You teach your mind, yes, this works. Yes, I will follow. So the next time, it becomes even easier, even faster, even more automatic, until one day, there is no gap at all. Thought appears, and you are already inside it, lost in it, reacting to it, believing it, and you don't even realize there was never a moment of awareness. This is why it feels like you have no control, because, in a way, you don't. Not while you are unconscious of what's happening, not while every thought is treated as truth. Control does not come from forcing the mind to stop. It comes from seeing the process clearly, seeing the moment a thought appears, and not immediately stepping into it, just noticing, just observing. But right now, that space does not exist for you because everything happens too quickly. Thought, belief, reaction. Instant, seamless, invisible. And that's why it feels like you. That's why you say, "This is how I think. This is just me." But it's not you. It's conditioning. It's repetition. It's a pattern that has been running for so long. You forgot it could be seen. You forgot it could be questioned. You forgot it could be different. Imagine for a moment. A thought appears, and instead of following it, you just watch it. No reaction, no belief, no resistance, just awareness. It comes, it stays for a moment, and then it goes. Nothing happens. No emotional storm, no chain reaction, just silence again. That moment is the beginning of freedom. But until that moment exists, you will continue to obey. Not because you are weak, not because you lack discipline, but because you are unaware. And in that unawareness, every thought becomes your master. Every idea becomes your direction. Every mental event becomes something you must follow. You don't think, you obey. And the more you begin to see that clearly, without judgment, without fear, the more space begins to open, a small gap, a slight pause, where you are no longer instantly pulled. And in that gap, for the first time, you are not controlled by what appears in your mind. You are simply watching it, and that changes everything. The you you're protecting is an illusion your mind created. There is a version of you that you are constantly trying to protect. You don't always see it clearly, but it's there, in the background of everything you do. The image of who you think you are, your identity, your story. The silent definition in your mind that says, "This is me." And because you believe this is real, you spend your life defending it. You want people to see you a certain way. You want to feel consistent. You want your past, your personality, your opinions to all fit into something solid, something stable, something that doesn't change, because that feels safe. If you know who you are, then you feel in control. But look closely, very closely. Is this you actually stable, or does it shift, depending on the moment? One day, you feel confident, clear, certain, strong in your decisions. And in that moment, you say, "This is who I am." But another day, without warning, you feel unsure, doubtful, heavy, disconnected from that same confidence. And now you say, "This is also me." So which one is true? The confident version, or the uncertain one? The strong one, or the lost one? They cannot both be fixed. They cannot both be permanent. And yet, you experience both. This is where the illusion begins to reveal itself. The self you believe in is not a single, solid thing. It is a collection, a shifting mix of thoughts, emotions, memories, and reactions, appearing and disappearing constantly. But your mind does something subtle. It takes these temporary experiences and turns them into identity. I felt embarrassed, so I am an insecure person. I failed once, so I am a failure. I succeeded, so I am better than others. It builds a story, and once that story is built, you start protecting it, defending it, holding on to it as if it defines your existence. And this is where suffering quietly begins, because now every situation becomes personal. Every interaction becomes a threat or validation. If someone criticizes you, it doesn't just feel like feedback, it feels like an attack on who you are. If something doesn't go your way, it doesn't just feel like a moment. It feels like proof that something is wrong with you. Why? Because you are not just experiencing life, you are constantly defending an identity, an image that must stay consistent, an idea that must be protected. But the problem is, life does not stay consistent. Your thoughts do not stay consistent. Your emotions do not stay consistent. So, the more you try to hold on to a fixed identity, the more tension you create inside yourself, because reality keeps changing, but you are trying to remain the same. You are trying to freeze something that is naturally fluid, and that creates conflict. Inside your own mind, you feel pressure to be someone, to act in line with your image, to maintain your story, even when it no longer fits, even when it feels heavy, even when it limits you, and you don't question it, because it feels like you. But here is the deeper truth Buddhism points to, that you is constructed. It is not something you were born with. It is something your mind built over time, through experiences, through repetition, through interpretation. And because it was built, it can also be seen, observed, not as who you are, but as something that appears in your mind, just like a thought, just like an emotion, temporary, changing, not fixed. But you've never been taught to look at it this way. So instead, you identify with it completely. You say, "This is me," and anything that challenges it feels like a threat. So you react, you defend, you protect, you argue, you avoid, all to keep this image intact, even when it's not real, even when it's just a collection of past experiences, being repeated in your mind. This is why you feel so much inner pressure, why you overthink what people think of you, why you replay conversations, why you worry about how you appear, because you are trying to maintain something that is not stable to begin with. And the more you try, the more fragile it becomes, because deep down, you sense the truth, that this identity can change, that it can collapse, that it is not solid, and that creates fear. But here is what happens when you begin to observe it. Instead of defend it, you start to notice the self is not always there. Sometimes you are just present, just aware, without thinking about who you are, without holding on to an identity. And in those moments, there is no pressure, no need to prove anything, no need to protect anything, just a quiet sense of being that is not tied to a story, that is not built from thoughts, that is simply there, before the mind creates a you, that is closer to your true nature, not the constructed identity, not the shifting story, but the awareness that sees it all, the awareness that notices. I feel confident right now. I feel uncertain right now, without turning either into identity, without saying, "This is who I am," just seeing it as a passing state. And when you begin to live from that awareness, something changes. You stop taking everything personally. You stop defending every thought about yourself. You stop carrying the weight of maintaining an image, because you see clearly. There is no fixed you to protect, only experiences passing through, only thoughts appearing and disappearing, only emotions rising and falling. And you are the one noticing all of it, not the one defined by it. The you you've been protecting was never as solid as it felt. And the moment you stop holding on to it so tightly, the tension begins to dissolve, because there is nothing left to defend, only something to observe. And in that observation, you begin to feel lighter. Not because you became someone new, but because you stopped trying to be someone fixed. And that is where real freedom quietly begins. The more you fight your mind, the deeper you fall into it. There is something you've been doing for a long time, without realizing it. Every time a thought appears that you don't like, you try to push it away. You try to stop it. You try to control it. You say things like, "I shouldn't be thinking this. I need to get rid of this. Why is this happening again?" And in that moment, it feels like you're taking control, like you're fighting back, like you're protecting yourself from something unwanted. But look carefully at what actually happens next. The thought doesn't disappear. It lingers. It comes back, stronger, clearer, more persistent, almost like it heard you and decided to stay. And then something strange happens. You don't just have the original thought anymore. Now you have a second layer: frustration about the thought, resistance to the thought, fear of the thought returning again. So what started as one simple mental event becomes something much heavier, because now you are not just thinking, you are fighting your own thinking. And that fight is what keeps it alive. This is one of the most subtle traps of the mind. You believe the problem is the thought, so you attack it. You resist it. You try to remove it from your experience. But resistance is not removal. Resistance is attention, and attention feeds whatever it touches. Every time you push a thought away, you are actually giving it importance. You are telling your mind, "This matters. This is dangerous. This needs to be handled." And the mind responds by bringing it back, again and again. Not because it wants to hurt you, but because you have signaled that this thought is important. So it keeps presenting it, trying to resolve it, trying to complete it. But there is nothing to resolve, because the more you engage, the more it grows. This is why some thoughts feel impossible to escape, not because they are powerful on their own, but because of how much energy you've been giving them. Think about it. A random thought appears. If you ignore it, if you don't react, if you don't give it attention, it fades quickly, naturally. But if you grab onto it, analyze it, fight it, it stays. It expands. It becomes something bigger than it ever was. And now you feel stuck. You feel trapped. You feel like your mind is working against you. But what's really happening is this. You are unintentionally feeding the very thing you want to escape. And the more you try to control your mind, the less control you feel. Because control creates tension, and tension keeps you focused on the problem. You become hyper-aware of the thought, watching it, monitoring it, waiting for it to disappear. But in doing that, you are still inside it, still connected to it, still giving it life. It's like trying to smooth water with your hands. The more you try, the more disturbance you create, and the water never becomes still. Your mind works in a similar way. The more you interfere, the more active it becomes. So, what's the alternative? If fighting doesn't work, If resisting makes it worse, what do? This is where Buddhism offers something that feels almost unnatural at first. You stop fighting, not because you've given up, but because you've understood something deeper, that thoughts do not need to be controlled. They need to be seen. When a thought appears, you don't push it away. You don't chase it. You don't argue with it. You simply notice it. It's there. You see it, but you don't step into it. You don't become it. You allow it to exist without interference. And this is the part that feels uncomfortable, because you are used to reacting, used to controlling, used to doing something. So when you don't react, it feels like you're doing nothing. But in reality, you are doing something very powerful. You are breaking the pattern. You are not feeding the thought. You are not strengthening it. You are letting it pass on its own. And when it is not fed, it loses energy. It weakens. It fades. Not instantly, not dramatically, but gradually, naturally. Because thoughts cannot survive without attention. They need engagement. They need your involvement. Without that, they come and they go, like everything else. But as long as you fight them, they stay. Because the fight itself is what keeps them alive. This is why your mind can feel like an endless loop. Because every time something uncomfortable appears, you react, you resist, you try to fix it. And that reaction creates more thinking, more tension, more noise, until you are completely caught inside it, and you don't even realize. You are the one maintaining the loop, not intentionally, not consciously, but through habit, through repetition, through the belief that you must control your mind to be free from it. But true freedom does not come from control. It comes from understanding that not every thought needs a response. Not every feeling needs to be fixed. Not every mental event needs your attention. And when you begin to live from that understanding, something shifts. You stop reacting to every thought. You stop feeding every pattern. You stop getting pulled into every loop. And slowly, the mind begins to quiet down. Not because you forced it to, but because you stopped giving it constant fuel. You stopped fighting. And in that absence of resistance, there is space. There is stillness. There is relief. Because for the first time, you are no longer at war with your own mind. And without that war, there is nothing left keeping you trapped inside it. There is another layer to this, even deeper than just fighting your thoughts. You don't only resist the thoughts themselves, you resist the feelings they create. A thought appears, and almost instantly, a feeling follows. Tension, anxiety, discomfort, and that feeling becomes the real problem, not the thought. The sensation in your body, the unease in your chest, the restlessness you can't explain, and the moment you feel it, you try to escape it. You distract yourself. You pick up your phone. You start scrolling. You look for something to occupy your attention, or you try to think your way out of it. You analyze the feeling. You search for reasons. You try to solve it. But here is what's actually happening. You are running from something that is already inside you, and the more you run, the more sensitive you become to it. The mind learns. This feeling is dangerous. This must be avoided. So it becomes alert, hyper-aware, watching for any sign of that feeling returning. And because of that, it finds it faster, even when it's small, even when it's barely there. You notice it, you react to it, and now the cycle begins again. Thought creates feeling. Feeling creates resistance. Resistance creates more thinking. And now you are stuck in a loop that feeds itself. Not because the original thought was strong, but because of how you responded to it. And this is why sometimes you feel trapped even when you don't know why. There is no clear problem. Nothing is happening outside. But inside, there is movement, subtle tension, a quiet discomfort that won't leave. And the more you try to get rid of it, the more it stays. Because again, resistance is a tension. Even when it's emotional, even when it's subtle, you are still feeding the experience. You are still holding it in place. But here is something you've probably never tried. Instead of running from the feeling, what if you stayed with it? Not analyzing it, not judging it, not trying to remove it, just feeling it directly as it is. The tightness, the heaviness, the unease, without labeling it, without turning it into a story, just observing the sensation in your body. This feels uncomfortable at first because you are used to escaping, used to avoiding, used to doing something. But if you stay without reacting, something unexpected happens. The feeling begins to change, not because you forced it, but because all sensations are temporary. They rise, they peak, they fall. But when you resist them, you interrupt that natural process. You hold them in place. You prolong them. You turn a passing sensation into a lasting problem. And that is why some feelings seem to never go away. Not because they are permanent, but because they are constantly being reactivated through resistance, through attention, through fear of them returning. But when you stop resisting, when you allow the feeling to be there without interference, it completes its cycle. It moves through you, and eventually it fades. And when it fades, you see something clearly. It was never as powerful as it felt. It only seemed powerful because you were pushing against it. This is a very different way of relating to your mind. You are not trying to control it. You are not trying to eliminate discomfort. You are changing your relationship to it, from resistance to observation, from fear to awareness. And in that shift, the entire dynamic changes. The mind loses its grip because it no longer gets the reaction it depends on. It no longer gets the energy it needs to continue. And slowly, the intensity decreases. The loops weaken. The noise softens. Not because the mind stopped producing thoughts, but because you stopped fueling them. You stopped reacting to every signal. You stopped treating every thought and feeling as something urgent. And that gives you something you haven't felt in a long time. Space. Room to breathe. Room to exist without being constantly pulled into something. And in that space, you begin to feel a different kind of control. Not control over your thoughts, but freedom from them. Freedom from having to respond to everything that appears. Freedom from being dragged into every feeling. Freedom from the constant need to fix what is happening inside you. Because you finally see, nothing inside you needs to be fought. Nothing inside you needs to be escaped. It only needs to be seen, allowed, understood. And when you live from that understanding, the struggle ends. Not because the mind is gone, but because you are no longer fighting it. And without that fight, there is nothing left keeping you trapped. Real freedom begins when you stop identifying with your mind. You've spent most of your life inside your mind, without realizing it, not just using it, living in it. Every thought that appeared felt like it was you. Every emotion that rose felt like it defined you. Every reaction felt personal. So when your mind was restless, you said, "I am restless." When your mind was anxious, you said, "I am anxious." When your mind was heavy, you said, "Something is wrong with me." You didn't see a separation. You didn't see a gap. You didn't see that something was happening, and something else was observing it. Everything was merged. Thought and identity, emotion and identity, experience and identity, all fused together. And because of that, every movement of the mind felt like your movement. Every disturbance felt like your disturbance. Every shift felt like something happening to you. This is where the illusion becomes strongest, not in the thoughts themselves, but in your identification with them. You don't just experience the mind, you become it. And when you become it, you lose all distance. There is no space to observe, no space to question, no space to step back. You are inside the storm, believing you are the storm. And as long as that identification continues, freedom feels impossible. Because how do you escape something that you believe is you? You can't. So you try to control it, fix it, silence it. But it never works completely, because you are still identified with it, still inside it, still reacting as if every thought is yours. Every emotion is yours. Every movement is you. But something changes the moment you begin to observe, not casually, not occasionally, but clearly, directly. A thought appears, and instead of saying, "This is me thinking," you notice, "This is a thought." A feeling rises, and instead of saying, "I am anxious," you see, anxiety is present. It seems small, just a shift in language. But it's not just language, it's perspective. You are no longer inside the experience. You are looking at it. And in that shift, a gap opens, a small distance between you and your mind. At first, it's subtle, easy to miss. The mind pulls you back in quickly. You forget. You identify again. You get lost again. But then you notice again. Another thought, another moment of awareness, another small gap. And slowly, that gap begins to grow, not by force, but by repeated seeing. You start to realize something unexpected. The mind continues, but you are not always inside it. Thoughts still appear, but you don't follow all of them. Emotions still rise, but you don't get consumed every time. There are moments where you are simply aware, watching, present, without reacting, without becoming anything. And in those moments, there is a kind of stillness, not because everything stopped, but because you are no longer entangled. The mind is active, but you are not trapped in its activity. You are separate, not disconnected in a cold way, but free in a quiet way. And this is where real freedom begins, not when the mind disappears, not when thoughts stop, but when you stop identifying with them, when you stop saying, "This is me," and start seeing, "This is happening." That shift changes everything, because now the mind can move without pulling you with it. A negative thought appears, and instead of spiraling, you see it, and it passes. A feeling of anxiety rises, and instead of reacting, you feel it, and it fades. Not because you forced it, but because you didn't attach to it. You didn't become it. And without that attachment, there is nothing holding it in place. This is what freedom actually feels like. Not control, not perfection, not a silent mind, but space. Space between you and what happens inside you. Space to choose whether to engage or not. Space to remain present. even when the mind is active. And in that space, you begin to feel something new, lightness, because you are no longer carrying every thought. You are no longer holding on to every emotion. You are no longer trying to fix every internal movement. You are allowing things to come and go naturally, without interference, without resistance, without identification. And the more you live from that space, the more stable it becomes. Not because the mind becomes perfect, but because your relationship to it changes. You stop fearing your thoughts. You stop fighting your feelings. You stop trying to control everything inside you, because you see clearly. You are not your mind. You are the awareness in which the mind appears. And that awareness is already free. It was never trapped. It was only identified. And once that identification begins to loosen, even slightly, the weight you've been carrying for so long starts to lift. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually, quietly, like something that was never meant to stay, finally being released. And in that release, you begin to understand something deeply. Freedom was never about escaping your mind. It was about no longer becoming it. There is a subtle moment, so small, so quick, that you've been missing it your entire life. A thought appears, and before you even notice it, you become it. There is no pause, no space, just immediate identification. But what if that moment could be seen, not controlled, not stopped, just seen? Because inside that moment is the difference between being trapped and being free. Right now, your experience happens like this. A thought appears, I'm not good enough. And instantly, you feel it. You believe it. You become it. Your body reacts. Your emotions follow. Your entire state shifts. All from one thought. But what you don't see is this. There was a gap, a very brief gap, between the thought appearing and you identifying with it. It was there, but it passed too quickly, because your habit is immediate reaction, instant belief, total involvement, so you never notice the space. But that space is where your freedom exists, not in controlling the thought, not in stopping the mind, but in seeing the moment before you become it. At first, this feels impossible, because everything moves too fast. Thoughts come rapidly. Emotions follow instantly. There is no time to step back. But with awareness, something begins to slow down. Not the thoughts, but your reaction to them. You start to notice the beginning, the very first moment a thought enters. And instead of immediately following it, there is a slight hesitation, a pause, almost like watching something from a distance. This is a thought. That's all. No story, no reaction, just recognition. And in that recognition, the chain breaks. Because without identification, the thought has no power. It can exist, but it cannot control you. It can appear, but it cannot define you. This is the shift most people never experience, because they are too busy trying to fix their thoughts, too busy trying to control their mind. But control is not the key. Awareness is. When you become aware, you don't need to stop the mind. You simply stop becoming it. And when that happens, something unexpected begins to unfold. You start to see patterns, not just individual thoughts, but the entire structure of your mind. You notice how certain thoughts always lead to certain emotions, how certain triggers always create the same reactions, how your mind repeats the same cycles over and over again. And for the first time, You are not inside the cycle. You are watching it, clearly, without being pulled in. And that changes everything. Because once you see a pattern clearly, it begins to lose its control. Not instantly, but gradually, because awareness breaks unconscious repetition. It brings light into something that was running automatically. And what is seen clearly cannot control you in the same way anymore. But there is another layer to this, even deeper. You begin to realize that you don't have to respond to everything. This might sound simple, but it changes your entire experience. Before, every thought demanded attention. Every feeling demanded a reaction. Every internal movement felt urgent. Now, there is space. A thought appears, and you don't follow it. A feeling rises, and you don't react. An urge comes, and you don't act on it. Not because you are forcing yourself, but because you are no longer identified with it. You are not inside it. You are watching it. And from that position, there is freedom. Freedom to choose. Freedom to stay still. Freedom to not engage. And this freedom feels unfamiliar at first, because you are used to being pulled, used to reacting, used to following every signal your mind sends. So when you don't, it feels strange, almost like something is missing. But what's actually missing is the constant compulsion, the automatic need to react, the endless movement inside your mind. And in its place, there is stillness. Not perfect stillness, not permanent silence, but moments where nothing is pulling you, nothing is demanding your attention, nothing is controlling your experience. Just presence, just awareness, just you, without the weight of identification. And as these moments increase, something deeper begins to settle. You start to trust this awareness. You start to rely on it, not as a technique, but as a natural way of being. You stop chasing control. You stop trying to fix every thought. You stop fearing your mind. Because you see clearly, it is just movement, just activity, just something happening within your awareness. And you are not that movement. You are not that activity. You are the one who sees it, the one who notices it, the one who remains, even as everything else changes. Thoughts come and go. Emotions rise and fall. States shift constantly. But something in you stays, silent, aware, unaffected. And the more you rest in that, the less you are disturbed by everything else. Because you are no longer identified. You are no longer inside the storm. You are aware of it. And that awareness is where your freedom lives. Not in escaping your mind, not in controlling your thoughts, but in no longer becoming them. And once that becomes clear, even slightly, you realize something powerful. You were never truly trapped. You were just too close to what was happening to see that you were always separate from it. And now you are beginning to see. And that seeing is the beginning of everything changing. The peace you're chasing is hidden beneath the noise you keep believing. You've been searching for peace for a long time. Maybe you didn't call it that. Maybe you called it clarity, stability, happiness, relief. But underneath all of it, you were looking for one thing, a moment where everything inside you becomes quiet, a moment where you are not pulled, not overwhelmed, not constantly thinking, just at ease. So you searched in new places, in new habits, in new routines. You tried to improve yourself, fix yourself, change your environment, thinking that somewhere, something would finally give you that peace. And sometimes, it almost feels like you found it. A quiet moment, a calm day, a situation where nothing is wrong. And for a brief time, you feel still. You feel okay, but it doesn't last. Because sooner or later, the noise comes back. A thought appears, then another, then a chain. And just like that, you're pulled back in. The peace disappears, and you're left wondering, why can't it stay? Why does it always go away? This is where the misunderstanding has been all along. You think peace is something you find, something you create, something you hold on to. But peace is not something you add. It is something that is already there, underneath everything, underneath the thoughts, underneath the reactions, underneath the constant movement of your mind. But you never notice it, because you are always focused on the noise, always engaged with the next thought, always reacting to what appears. So your attention is on the surface, on the activity, on the endless movement. And because of that, you miss what is underneath. Imagine the surface of water, constantly moving, waves, ripples, disturbance. If you only look at the surface, it always seems chaotic, unstable, restless. But beneath that surface, there is stillness, quiet, undisturbed. That stillness doesn't come and go, it is always there. The surface moves, but the depth remains calm. Your mind works the same way. Thoughts are the surface, constantly changing, always moving, always pulling your attention. But beneath that movement, there is a deeper layer, a silent awareness, a still presence. That is not disturbed by every thought. That is not affected by every emotion. That remains, even when everything else is active. You have felt it before, in small moments. Moments where thinking stops, even briefly, when you are fully present, watching something, listening deeply, or just sitting without trying to fix anything. In those moments, there is no struggle, no tension, no noise, just a quiet sense of being. That is peace. Not something you created, something you uncovered, but because it's so subtle, you overlook it. You return to thinking, to analyzing, to chasing something more. And the moment you do that, the noise returns, and it covers that stillness again. Not because the stillness disappeared, but because your attention moved away from it, back to the surface, back to the movement, back to the mind. This is why chasing peace never works, because chasing is movement, and movement keeps you on the surface, looking for something more, something better, something different. But peace is not in movement, it is in stillness, not forced stillness, not controlled silence, but natural stillness. That reveals itself when you stop interfering, when you stop following every thought, when you stop reacting to every feeling, when you stop trying to fix what is happening inside you. Because in that moment, the mind slows down, not completely, but enough for you to notice what has always been there. A quiet background, a stable presence. That does not depend on anything, not on your situation, not on your thoughts, not on your emotions. It is simply there. And the more you rest your attention there, the more familiar it becomes, the more stable it feels. The less you are pulled by every passing thought, because you start to see clearly. The noise is not constant. It only feels constant because you keep engaging with it. But if you don't, if you let thoughts come and go without following them, without believing them, they lose their grip. They pass more easily. They fade more quickly. And what remains is that quiet presence, that stillness, That peace. Not something you achieved, but something you stopped covering. And this changes how you live. You stop chasing peace outside. You stop expecting situations to fix your inner state. You stop believing that something is missing. Because you see clearly, nothing was missing. Only your attention was misplaced. It was caught in the noise, in the constant movement, in the endless stream of thoughts. But now, it begins to settle. Not perfectly, not permanently, but enough. Enough to feel the difference. Enough to know what is real and what is just passing through. Thoughts will still come. The mind will still move. Life will still change. But beneath all of that, there is something stable, something quiet, something untouched. And the more you return to it, the more you realize you were never far from peace. You were just lost in the noise you kept believing. And now, for the first time, you are beginning to hear what was always there. Silence, stillness, a presence that does not need anything. And in that, you finally stop searching, because what you were looking for was never outside. It was always waiting, behind everything your mind kept showing you.